Simple question. Should Jeremy Clarkson be cancelled?
No, I think, look, it was a joke. It was very clearly a joke. But I always say if a joke is more offensive than it is funny, then it's not funny. You probably shouldn't tell it. But that's no reason to call for someone to be put in prison. I mean, there were people on Twitter literally saying this is a hate crime and Jeremy Clarkson should be locked up and should never work again. Now, I think that's obviously a bit too far. You can say that the joke wasn't funny and he shouldn't have told it. But I think also turning around and saying that the Sun should not have published it, that's ludicrous. Many newspapers publish many things which aren't funny and which miss the mark. That's the part of journalism. You know, it's up to the reader to decide whether they like it or not, and to decide whether they buy the paper or not on the basis of what they do and do not like. I think turning around and saying we need to throw him in prison and ruin his career and, you know, get rid of the Sun as a paper altogether is, you know, typical of this bloodthirsty mob mentality where the slightest thing goes against common decency or the new morality and the mob starts up.
All right, Benjamin. Well, look, Rebecca, I've got a funny feeling you're not going to entirely agree with that point of view. So what do you think then? Firstly, about the article and about Jeremy Clarkson and this whole idea of cancelling people. I hate it, I have to be honest. People can be reprimanded, but this whole cancelling culture has gone slightly crazy. What do you feel, though, about the article and the amount of complaints it got?
I didn't like the article personally. I thought it was misjudged because in order to understand that it was a joke, you needed to have watched a specific episode of Game of Thrones. And actually, just as a writer, I don't feel like you're doing your job if somebody needs to have watched a specific episode of a TV show to be able to understand the joke that you're making. I would agree that he shouldn't be thrown in prison, he shouldn't lose his home, he shouldn't be burned at the stake. And the issue with cancel culture is that we burn very bright and very fast. So you get so angry and it's all anybody can talk about for a week and then we forget about it. It's the same thing that happened when he punched that TV producer. And actually, we would do better to be more moderated and more modulated in our anger and then talk about, why does this happen? Why is the state of journalism such that people need to say such provocative things in order to get attention? That's a productive discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I have watched the first two episodes, obviously, of Harry and Meghan's Netflix series. And I have to be honest, in the first two, I thought they came across very nicely. But I know after that, things changed somewhat. And obviously, the content gets slightly more provocative, it has to be said. Firstly, have you seen the series yourself, Benjamin? Have you watched all six?
No, I've done everything I possibly can to avoid watching it. I've heard their side of their story already, and I think giving it any more attention and airtime, which I think was part of the joke that Clarkson was making. He was saying, I lie awake at night worrying about this. What he was actually saying was, I don't actually care about these people. They want us to care so much about them. So he was exaggerating the amount that we care. But I think most people in this country are actually just a bit bored of them and don't want to be exposed to them. But to get back to Rebecca's point about how you can't make a reference in case people don't get it, well, then that means you can't make any references at all in journalism. You can't make literary references. You can't make cultural references. You can't make any kind of references at all because someone might not understand the reference and get offended. And as far as references go, it's not an obscure one. Game of Thrones is one of the most popular shows in the current time. I mean, a lot of people will get that reference.
Rebecca Reid, have you watched the series, as a matter of fact?
The Meghan and Harry series?
Yeah.
Yes, I watched all six because I'm a messy who loves drama. And I love them and I enjoyed them and they're ridiculous. And it's like Wallace and Edward all over again. But I also watch the Kardashians. I'm not watching this because I love great art. I'm watching it because I love watching other people's families tear each other apart. Just to respond to the point about references, I just think good writing means that you shouldn't leave your reader alienated. And if a very significant portion of the people who read this column were unable to understand that this wasn't like a weird fantasy Jeremy Clarkson was having, it was a specific allusion to something that happened. And clearly it wasn't delivered with the right mechanism to make people understand it. And I always take the view as a writer that if a very large portion of people who read my piece were upset by it, and that happens to me a lot, that's on me. I haven't done my job properly. I haven't delivered it clearly enough.